Survival. Day 2, the moment of truth. No more playing around. It's time to learn what cross-track really means. The Pyrenees lie in wait like a setting for some daunting Wild West movie. First on the agenda, surmounting this monumental wall of rock. The thin, lighter coloured line straight across the mountain shows the way, a steep path. At breakfast, the riders still have the chance to take in the impending challenge in panoramic view. Nervous smiles, silence, a few sweaty palms perhaps, certainly a few uneasy laughs. First up, Germany 1. There are 3 sections that require safety lines to get across. The SIP people are in charge of safety measures. Upon arrival, the engine has to be turned off, rider and bike secured by safety lines, each maneuver monitored closely. The instructions are administered in a calm voice, but everyone understands loud and clear. Just one look down is enough to turn the biggest show-off into a timid schoolboy. In the meantime, Germany 2, the Bavarians, have made their way up to the Massif on their Husqvarnas. Patience is a virtue. Wonderful panoramic views if you have the time or the nerve to take them in. You certainly don't want to be footing down that slope on your right-hand side, fellas. Funny, I thought that motorcycles had engines so you could enjoy revving them around the place, but here's another way in which you can tantalizingly frighten yourself stupid with a motorbike without ever starting it. Germany 1 has reached the last rope bridge. It's 50 meters, that's about 164 feet across this ravine. The bike has to be heaved across on ropes. The rider has to climb around the back of the face of the mountain. No easy task considering the hard soles that motocross boots have on them.
Okay. Now the wall takes it. Okay, Nico, now...
Oh, eat your heart out, Jeremy McGrath. In this kind of situation, it becomes apparent why 3-man teams were a given necessity in this cross-track event. 1 or 2 people would hardly be able to tackle this bike lifting and rigorous riding, especially if one of them gets injured. On the other hand, as long as no one gets hurt, there's always an odd man out per team. But interestingly enough, from his vantage point, he often comes up with the best ideas. We pan back to the point where it all begins. The Swiss are being strapped up. The first and second sections with safety lines are almost identical. On both of them, there's a vertiginous drop to the right in the direction of riding. This looks incredibly uncomfortable. Perhaps you ought to just gas it across there, motocross style. Waiting, was it the outside peg or the inside one? Dickie Dye once told me in a training session for the gruesomely incompetent. I think on this instant it's just wait the left knee, isn't it? I've never seen knobbly so necessary. Now the Bavarians have reached the ravine with the safety lines. Rush at speeds of up to 70 kilometers per hour, that's around 43 to 45 miles per hour. And these guys can finally have a bit of fun. Germany 1 had the advantage of being first in the starting order, and they're still out in front. The team has come to a tributary of the River Segre. The Rio Segre used to have a bridge here, not anymore. They have to get across the river and pass through a checkpoint on the other side. But this river has got to be at least 10 feet or 3 meters deep in the middle. Their only chance is to look for a ford. Meanwhile, the Bavarians have shown up. They are running in second place. By way of avoiding or going round an obstacle, you get disqualified immediately. Your time doesn't count until the last rider in your group has reached the finish line. Retirements cost a team 10 penalty hours per head, which is a bit fierce. The Swiss have reached the river too. They are running in third. Right behind them on the gas are the Austrians, who, for the time being, are bringing up the rear. Quick, quick, I'm sinking. Lift that gas up. Teamwork indeed from the Swiss guys with the KTMs. And the Austrians still trying to plug those little gases through the water. The Bavarians managed to cross over quickly, but all three Huskies got drenched. Drowned out, they won't start. A chance for the others to pass them. And yet the true challenge is yet to come, the Rio Segre itself. Ice-cold water from the melted Pyrenees snow, 70 degrees centigrade, fast-moving, and 50 meters, that's around 160 feet across. Germany 1 is already looking for the best route, while the rest of the pack is still down at the non-existent bridge, shaking the water out of their ears. Before you can submerge the bikes, you have to shut the fuel cock off and burn the remaining fuel, and then you have to seal the gas tank tightly. From where the bridge used to be, the next teams make their approach, while the first bikes from Team Germany 1 enter the Rio Segre. Running in second, the Swiss team reaches the shore. Germany 1 holding hands and fearing for their lives. The Austrians also managed to make up ground. They are now running in third place. And below, the Bavarians are still trying to get their soaked bikes to restart, while the Swiss pass up their first bike. That's a good way of doing it. Keep it out of the water altogether. The Germans with their second bike. This is where improvisation skill comes in handy. What's the most efficient solution? It can cost or win you a lot of time. The Austrians try sealing off the spark plugs. And this is the Austrians with their first bike. Apparently, harder with two. Germany 1 getting up a steep part of the riverbank. The only way to do it is with the help of ropes and teamwork. The Bavarians in the distance finally get their Husqvarnas running again and start to move on. The Austrians fight their way back alone. You can't take a horse to water perhaps, but you can certainly take a motorbike. Now the Bavarians aren't sticking to the set trail. Benefiting from this enterprising chaos in front of them and taking advantage of being behind, they find a more shallow crossing upstream. The Austrians have to replace all their spark plugs despite the trouble they took to seal them off. And farther along the trail, the next obstacle is to cross a man-made lake. Each team gets one canoe. Load up your bike and bon voyage. Jörg Steenbock of Germany 1 is the first intrepid adventurer. Tentative paddling, but the Germans remain out in front nonetheless. This is an intrepid frontiersman, proving just how useless a motorcycle can be if you take it silly places. His brethren anxiously watching for any signs of sinking. The Swiss, the third team to reach the lake. The Bavarians are already there. Josef Fuchs up to his neck in water. They regained a lot of ground crossing at the upstream ford, passing the other two teams. Jörg Steenbock has already reached the other side with the first German bike, but there are still two left to ferry over, because each team only has one canoe. The Bavarians are pushing off. Their first crossover is the hardest. An Eskimo roll is pretty simple, and the problem with that is the bikes are gone because the lake is about 13 to 20 feet deep and there aren't any divers to be seen anywhere. The Swiss, not exactly seafaring folk, watched by a justifiably gobsmacked native Catalonian. Will his wife believe him when he gets home? You've been drinking again, Jose. The robust frame of Andy Zimmerer, intimidated by the waves, hardly dares draw breath. The canoe is top-heavy. It's dangerous to even cough. My God, do I have to do that? Finally, Germany 1 is through and clear, but a fallen tree lies across the path ahead. Karl-Heinz halts, doesn't hesitate. He hurls his bike over the log and, well, that's it really. Makes no attempt to hang on to it, just retrieves it at the hardy Husaberg on the other side. No technique exactly, just lots of bottle, and it works. His teammates join forces to lift their bikes over. After all, both they and their bikes still have to survive another day and a half. One man and his dog wondering what the devil is going on. But he doesn't see this every day that he takes the dog out for a walk. Now, of course, they've got to get out of the riverbed gorge, and that isn't so easy because the side of the bank is rather high, and that's precisely where they have to ride out. Germany 1 begins its attack, shall we say, on the slope. First, of course, you've got to get one man to leg it up the slope. A few minutes later, the Bavarians show up as well. They have really caught up, and the Austrians are just getting by the tree. They loaded 2 bikes on the canoe at once and managed by sheer force to pass the Swiss. And on the slope, it's Germans against Germans, side by side. Up, up, you can do it. Now even the Swiss are finished with the canoe section and are closing in. Find me some grip. The Bavarians are in their element here. One after another, they heave themselves with sheer brute force up and over the ridge. Not to mention their motorbikes. You can do it. Germany 1 isn't as powerful. They watch the Bavarians disappear and then they team up with the Austrians. Clever boys. Good ruse. The only Bavarian left to lift up now is their workhorse, Andy Zimmerer. Strong as a mammoth, flexible as one too. Once they get him up, they're all there, and they're away. Meanwhile, the Swiss are in the action too. The Germans and Austrians are still going at it together. One motorbike, 6 guys, makes a lot of sense. The guys on the right-hand side with only 3, they are struggling. With not teaming up with anybody, the Swiss, in the end, had to rely on outside assistance, without which they would have never made it up. And that, rather unkindly, cost them a half-hour penalty. On this stage now, the Bavarians are out in front. At the bridge, they were way back in last place. Now they're leading. That's how fast fortunes can change. Running in second at a considerable distance is Germany 1. Behind them, in third, the Austrians. Now there's about 50 kilometers, that 30 miles of rugged terrain, a stage with treacherous surprises every few yards. But at least you can enjoy attempting to ride your motorcycle through the stuff. This is the Rat Hole, a truly ominous tunnel. Germany 1 has repassed Bavaria, and while the latter struggles with a flat tyre, the former, having got a bit of undergrowth out of its rear end, the former is the first team to crawl through the hole. In the middle of the rat hole, the pipe actually gets narrower. Some bikes have to have bungee wires wrapped around their front ends to compress the forks, otherwise they'd never fit through. Being relatively stunted in stature helps too, of course. Squeeze yourself through there. Painful looking operation, but the Bavarians are only a minute behind, and we're going to join them going through the tunnel. Even though they strap the front ends of their bikes down too, however, the Huskies will barely fit through the tunnel standing upright. How do we sort this one out, Fritz? I find myself marvelling at what this cramped thoroughfare might have been designed for. Even their the diminutive Spanish superstars, like their 5'0" motocrossing champion of the 1980s, Tony Elias, would have to duck his head to get through it. Please photograph my best side. This is it. Lean over that way then. They'd better remember to release those front forks before taking off at the other end, of course, otherwise they'll be straight over the bars. a particularly unpleasant business. As the Bavarians are emerging from the tunnel, Germany 1 is already struggling to get through a crevice in the rock some 100 meters, 300 feet further on. As if the tunnel wasn't enough, already the back of the pack comes squeezing out of the rat hole. Switzerland just the length of a handsome Roman nose ahead of Austria. Oh, I shouldn't be doing this. I should be at home in front of the telly. Just get it, just get it. 200 metres in front of the finish line on day 2, there's another steep ascent up a boulder-strewn slope. The Bavarians have taken the lead again. It's their German rivals' turn to struggle with a flat tyre. According to the rules, if the worst comes to the worst, a team has to cross the finish line with at least one bike. The Bavarians, for some reason, insist on getting all 3 up and across the finishing line. That's because they're stout, good, honest fellows. A snide comment from the sidelines. If you don't have the brains, you've got to have brawn. Well, the Bavarians certainly have the brawn, and they're determined to get all 3 Husqvarnas up there. Good on them, I say. Now, Germany 1 reaches this point in 2nd place. They're well seasoned at FIM regulations. It's FIM regulations. And knowing how to find useful loopholes. They park 2 bikes, make sure they get one up, and ride the last 660 feet across the finish line on the one machine. Their motto, brains instead of brawn. I'd call it a sort of subtle form of sneaky cheating myself. And here come the gallant Austrians. Hein, you fool! Both the Austrians and the Swiss, however, they've seen the parked German bikes and cottoned on right away, so both teams decide to get one bike up, just the one, and the Austrians are the first to succeed. A frustrated Swiss man with a rope but no motorbike, but eventually the Swiss managed to get one KTM up there as well. And we reach the finish line at the end of day 2. Germany 2, better known as the Bavarians, crossed the finish line as clear leaders, and I say good for them because they're on all three Huskies. The fact that the whole team and their bikes made it is obviously an added bonus for them. Well done, fellas. Second place, Germany 1, 3 fellas on 1 bike. Woo! Well, whatever shape or form you make it back in, as long as there's 3 men there. I wonder if they could get just 3 fellas on foot. Austria comes in third. Also 3 men on a gas. Everybody looks mighty relieved. And bringing up the rear, the gallant Swiss team. On top of that,